This is a former Facebook executive. He was the one that said, I feel bad about what we've done. We are ripping apart the social fabric of how society works by making all social relations go online and disconnecting people from one another. So as a former Facebook executive, he said, we are destroying how society works. He also said this in the same interview. He said, you don't realize it, but you are being programmed. So this is still going on. Edward Bernays' world is upon us, and it's even more deceiving. Programming. You are being programmed. I want to share with you some other whistleblowers and people who came out of big tech who've said similar things. This is James Williams. He's probably the most important inventor of any advertising metric on the internet in the history of the internet. He's a big, big name in Google. And one day, he tells the story, we had our office desktops, and there was one of these screens that was showing the analytics and the tracking of how much online web traffic was going to this and going to that. And he said, I had, in my words, a pang of conscience. His words specifically were, he called colleagues over and he said, see this data point right here? This is 1 million people that we just caused to do something that wouldn't have otherwise done that and was not even in their best interest. And so he called it, these are his words, he's now a critic of what he calls the largest, most standardized, and most centralized form of attention control in human history. So if we go unguarded, unwarned, unaware of the manipulative techniques being used in the online ecosystem, then we go in ready to be a part of the largest, most standardized, and most centralized form of attention control in human history. They're competing for our time, our attention, our worldviews, our mind, capturing the minds, as we heard in Colossians 2, verse 8, do not be taken captive. This is another whistleblower from big tech, Tristan Harris. He explained in a talk he did in a publication article that kind of went viral. You've probably heard of him. He said, okay, so I was studying at Stanford University, one of these up-and-coming engineers to get into the Silicon Valley world and start doing big business online. And he said, we had persuasive technology laboratories where we were taught, listen to these words, covert methods of how to influence people's online behavior. Now, time out. Did you just say it's called persuasive technology and then you're using covert methods to influence people? That's a little disingenuous, isn't it? That's not persuasion. If you're using covert, what does covert mean? It means under the radar. It means subtle, like the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, right? Deceptive, more crafty, and they call it persuasion. What is persuasion? We should believe in and do persuasion. Some people say that speech is violent and it's offensive and that you can't speak, but persuasion is the ultimate peaceful form to try to bring somebody into what you believe is a better understanding, a more empowering understanding of something, of anything. Persuasion is where you present evidence, logic, reasoning, maybe appeal to the conscience, and then leave people free to decide, right? That's persuasion. Satan is about manipulation, totally different ballgame. And Tristan Harris is blowing the whistle on that. He says, never before in history have the decisions of a handful of designers had so much impact on how millions of people around the world spend their attention. That's an amazing statement. He goes on and says, all of us are jacked into this system. All of our minds can be hijacked. Our choices are not as free as we think they are. You don't realize it, but you are being programmed. A handful of people working at a handful of technology companies, through their choices, will steer what 1 billion people are thinking today. Does that make anybody want to kind of just drop the Google and the big tech and the social media for a bit and read a book, right? How about read the book and become a thinker, not a mere reflector of other men's thoughts? Not to say that we can't utilize these tools in balance, knowing the dangers and being aware of them and warding against them, but not throwing ourselves into it and receiving passively and following the impulses. We've got to be thoughtful, slowing down our online behavior, or it ceases to be a tool. This was a clever cartoon somebody put out. The smartphone came out. This is great, cool. I'm going to use it. I'm going to be a user of the smartphone. And then you fast forward about 12 years and the tables have turned. It's like, we're getting owned. That's what the MTV guy said. At MTV, we don't shoot for the 14-year-olds. We own them. Maybe it's the same thing with big tech, social media, the smartphone revolution, the Googles of the world. Can I give you one little trick that they did? I found this interesting that Harris brought out. He said they made one simple change at Facebook because engagement was languishing. They were not getting as much people staying on the platform, contributing content, capturing their attention for hours on end that they wanted. And at that time, the Facebook color scheme was blue. And there were not any red notifications yet that we are used to, but they innovated this idea. They said, well, let's just simply change the notification color to red and see what happens. And you might be like, that's ridiculous. That's not going to do anything. You don't understand the high level a multi-billion-dollar, well-funded psychological expertise that is being poured into capturing and keeping our attention on these platforms. And here they go. It's just the color scheme, right? Engagement skyrocketed just by making the color red. How? Why? This is crazy. I'm being manipulated. Well, Tristan Harris says red is a trigger color, and that's why it's used as an alarm signal. So the brain, in the amygdala, down in the limbic system of the brain, sees the red notification and has a higher level of anxiety, like a little anxiety alarm, like I gotta solve this, like a red light or a stop sign or a fire alarm. Red is a trigger color as an alarm signal in our society, in our brains, for whatever reason. Just an interesting technique, I thought.